So how do we integrate this now? Because remember we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right, for behaviors, 1, 2, 3, 4 for KPIs. What is the weight that we're going to give? And this was decided upon by your steering committee, by SPAN. Basically, SPAN's turned around and said, we give extra weight to the KPI. KPIs are important because we are down here right now. Our performance is bad. We need to move here. So behavior is important, but not as important as KPIs. So the weight right now for the KPIs for this next year is 70%, and leadership competencies for the behaviors is 30%. So ultimately what will happen is you take a KPI score, the final score that you have, and you multiply it by 0.7, you take your behavior score, final score, total score, multiply it by 0.3, you add them together, and that's your total score. Okay? And what's important is that we have equivalent measures for both KPIs and for behaviors. A consistency in how we look. That 3 is perfectly acceptable, 4 is acceptable. Okay, so here's an example. Your KPI score is 3.2, but your behaviors are not great. They're in the yellow zone. So this is someone who's doing a good job but behaving poorly. Even under this system, right? The KPIs are stronger because it's 70%. So basically, if you multiply 3.2 by 0.7 is 2.24, and the 2.7 for behaviors is times 0.3 is 0.1. You add them, they're still okay. They're still okay. So bad behavior still will go on a little bit. You're good. If you're a nice person, so you have a nice score on the behavior, you're doing well, but you're not achieving your targets, you're not going to do well. So, a nice person who does not do a good job is going to get a 2.8. Well, the person who does a good job but is not nice or is not appropriately behaving is going to do better. That's what the system says. And kind of, it basically says this is more important than this at this point in time. And to us, it makes sense. Because behaviors, A, they take time to develop. So we don't want to overcompensate for behaviors. And B, you have to get your performance right. You have to get your KPIs right. Let's focus on that first. In organizations that are very highly evolved, they don't even look at KPI scores anymore. They don't look at behavior. But you're not there yet. You need to learn how to walk. You learn to walk by performing, through performance. So it makes sense that you have this kind of thing. Right? What happens if you are really bad behavior? That will come out. It's like when you have water, right? And the water drops, and the rocks start forming. The first rocks that pop up are the problem rocks. The people who have really bad behaviors, who have really issues with KPIs, they will show up. They will still show up under the system. So don't worry, all of these bad behaviors will be hidden. They're not. They will show up if they are severe. And if you really bad behavior, even if you have great behavior, okay behavior, but really do not perform, like that first example we showed, you only get a 1.9. Yeah? So you're really in trouble. Okay. How is it? Yeah, go ahead.
How do you measure the behaviors?
Yeah, we're going to do that right now.
Right.
So basically, 3 times a year, you will be doing a review of some sort. The first review is a planning review. That should happen at the beginning of the year or in December. And that is, what are we going to do with KPIs, and what are we going to do in terms of the behavior changes that we want to see. Okay? So that happens here. This is the planning stuff. This is what we call the detailed planning for the year. Now we know things happen, right? Things happen ad hoc all the time. Things change, priorities shift, etc. So basically, in the middle of the year, around the June-July period, we'll have what's called a mid-year review. The mid-year review has 2 goals. One is, how are we doing? How are things going? And more importantly, is there anything we need to change? Because things change. Not us. So we're not going to lower our scores or our targets just so we look better, but because the ministry has changed, or something else has happened, and therefore the priority has changed. And we have to reflect that in our KPIs. And then at the end of the year, so in the December period, we now look back on the year. What did we achieve at the KPI level? What did we achieve at the behavior level? and we get a score for that. The only time a score comes up, the only time in any of these forms is here. It doesn't come up there, it doesn't come up here. Why? Because it's not, right now, you know where you are, kind of, sort of. Don't worry about this as a 3 or a 4. We worry about that when the total score comes in. So basically, these are the 3 types of forms that I've been showing you now, and how you measure it, yeah? Any questions on that? What happens very often in organizations, that this one and this one are put together. So you first do this, and then in the second meeting, or the same meeting, you do this. So what was the results for this year? What are we going to plan for next year? That kind of makes sense? This meeting tends to be very long then. And you're tired, emotionally drained after doing this. So the last thing you want to do is to start talking about this. Most often. So usually we say do 2 separate meetings. Maybe 1 month apart, maybe a week apart. But they have to happen more or less at the same time. Okay? Any questions then on this? So let me shift over. I only have the ones for the non-executives, but it's the same setup as with the executives. So if you're an executive, you will be having, oops, sorry. You'll be having the same sheet, the same number of pages. If you're an HOD, you have the same forms, the same number of pages, but they're just different content, particularly in the behavior. Remember, the behaviors, as you go up, level 1, 2, 3, change, right? Responsibility increases. Okay? So this is the January planning for the year performance. The first page is this. It basically says your name, rank, all that. Okay, thank you very much. And some of you have 2 supervisors, so they put the names in there. And this is the most important one. It basically says this is a meeting, and this meeting must take place between the boss and the employee. Do not allow your boss to fill this out without you. Do not. Do not allow your boss to tell you to fill it out without him or her. Do not. Why? It's a discussion. You're supposed to be talking together and agreeing, maybe even disagreeing, but you need to talk. This is a conversation. This is not a form. This is a conversation upon which you will then be filling out a form. Okay? That has to be very clear in your head. It is a conversation. Please. Right? Because this is what happens. This is the KPIs. Remember this? Right? We talked about this. That your KPI has to be linked to a strategy, or else it's not a KPI. The other thing is that, and we'll talk about this in a bit, there are certain ways of writing KPIs that basically are a good way of writing KPIs, and there are bad ways of writing KPIs. We'll see that in a little bit. We'll go with that later. Right? So this is the page, so it's page 2 of 18, that basically says this is what we're going to be doing, this is the way we're going to do it, and by the way, if you are a non-executive, you get 3 to 5 KPIs. Don't allow yourself to have more than 5 KPIs. Why? Because basically human beings, we can remember 5 things easily. And the other thing is that, how many of you have KPIs like 10, 12 KPIs? It's crazy. Right? Can you remember the 10 or 12 if you have them? And then everyone's 5%. So what's important? Where is it important? It doesn't make sense. So therefore, you need 3 to 5 KPIs, maximum 5, and no KPI should have a weightage less than 15%. If it's less than 15%, it's not important. Why have it as a KPI?
How about if there is only 3 or 4? Is it
3 or 4?
3 or 4, which means first you could be the 10%, 3%.
Yeah, if you have 3 at 15%, the fourth one is therefore 75%.
To be the decent people.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm saying less than 15%. Less than. So don't take something that's 10%, 5%, 12%. That's too low. It's not important enough. I mean, anything at less than 15% means it's not important. So why have it as a KPI?
Because basically,
Yeah, that's something you need to protect, okay? If you have one KPI that's 70%, and then the next two are 15%, if you fail your 70%, if you only reach 80% of that target, you will fail. So having 3 as a minimum is a minimum protection for you. And make sure if you only have 3, it's 30, 30, 40, or something like that. It's still okay. Well, the reason why we say minimum of 3 is because if you only have 2 and you miss 1, you're in trouble. So this is a method of protecting you a little bit. But don't go overboard and get a bunch of KPIs, because you cannot achieve all those KPIs. And therefore it becomes, well, which one do I do? And then it's unclear, and then it's confusing, and then there's going to be disagreement, and it's not going to be happy at the end of the year.
This is the KPI you relate to the strategy, right?
Yeah.
So what if the end of or not related to the strategy? How can we adjust the
Okay, that's a very good point. So let me hold on to that. Let me just go through how these KPIs are done. Okay? So this is KPI number 1 down here. This is you. So basically these need to be filled out through the organization. So this level is talking about what is the relevant strategy? Where do we start? Where does this KPI link into the strategy? That's what this says. So the strategy has to be written down, and the target for that strategy is for the entirety of SPAN. Then it goes down to what we call the department level, what we call the division level. From that strategy KPI, what is the division's responsibility? What is the target in the division? And then, what does that mean for your department level? Now you're down to the department level, what does that mean to you, the individual? So you can see there's a direct link between the strategy and the department and your role. Now, turn around and say, my KPI doesn't relate to any of this, don't accept it. The ad hoc piece will come along, but the ad hoc piece should not be in your KPI. Now, if the ad hoc piece is 30%, 40% of your job, hey, come on man, what is this? I'm supposed to be doing this, and you're asking me to do that, help me understand, right? Help me understand. How does this ad hoc thing fit here? You have an absolute right to ask that. And if it does fit, then give me that KPI.
Sometimes maybe the department get, but not the division from.
That's not possible under the system. The department cannot have a KPI that is independent of the division or independent of the strategy. Then what is this department doing? It's not covering water, because we have water in the strategy. It's not covering people, because we have people in the strategy. It's not covering IT, because we have IT in the strategy. What is it covering? What are you doing?
I mean, that's water.
Yeah.
They got a few divisions.
Yes.
Then the test is given supposed to be to the E division, but the D division is given.
The division is what?
One department got A, B, C division.
Yeah.
The task they are supposed to be done by the A division,
Right.
but they given to the D division.
How does this fit in here? Because basically, this is the go down, right? So if you turn around and say the division has this as a KPI, and then your department, and you're saying you're A, right? So A department has this KPI, but you're in B department and your KPI relates to A. Makes no sense, right? It doesn't make sense. So you basically can turn around and say, but this is the department's KPI. How does my KPI relate to that? I can't be doing somebody else's job. If you're not under control, then, if you're doing somebody else's job, you're not under control. Right? You do not control that. Yeah? That's very important. So, if A is doing B's job here, you can't do a KPI. That's important, right? Now, if you turn around and say, okay, we're moving A to B, right? Responsibility, because this up here stays the same, but it's down here that we have the problem. Okay, we switch it. We now have that B is taking care of that. And therefore, your KPI matches. But if your KPI doesn't match the department, you can't have it as a KPI. Because it's like, well, what are you doing? Someone's doing something over here. You should be working over there. Right? So this is where it becomes obvious. Are we doing the job we're supposed to be doing in order to support the strategy? And that is a famous ad hoc, yeah? But does it fit at all with what we're supposed to be doing? And if it doesn't, you have the right to ask, how does this fit? And does it impact my KPIs?
Okay, let's say it's indeed linked to the spine strategy and also the muscle inhibition. The next one KPI, is it has to be, will it be at 5 or can it be 6 to 7? Is there a comfort rate?
6 or 7 KPIs? Yeah. Okay, what happens, yeah, at the non-executives, it's 5 maximum. At the executives and HODs, it's 7. It has to go up, yeah. And the only difference between the HOD and the executives and non-executives is that they're stopped here. They are stopped here. They are in charge of this level, HODs. The heads or executives can be down here. And certainly yours, if you're a non-executive, has to fit. Now here's the thing, other thing. So let's look at this. Okay, say for example, right, non-governing water, that I know the term, and RW, right? So at the strategy level, for 2020, RW needs to go from 35% down to 28%. Okay? And then it goes down to the division, then it goes down to the department, then it goes down to the individual. And say there are 2 divisions or 1 division that takes care of that. Is there 1 division or more than that? More than that, right? So basically, at this level already, we're splitting out who has responsibility for what percentage. In the NRW, what division, right, does it? Because then the department comes in. So we've already split out the KPI, and this KPI is different than this one, right? Because they're doing a different job. Correct? So maybe this is taking, I don't know, what they will do to reduce.
For the registration, so they are able to register for that to register the water and the agriculture. They are under awareness.
So this is registration, and what is the other one? Corporate?
Yeah.
Corporate water, right?
To do awareness.
Right, corporate awareness. For NRW? Okay, let's say that. All right. So what would be, in order to reduce from 35% to 28%, what would be the corporate awareness campaign look like? Do you have to do 20,000 awareness? What is the measure that will allow you, under corporate awareness, to achieve this target? Registration.
I want to register 100 products for the last year. Is it acceptable? Then for the corporate awareness, they say
Okay, but 100 products, is that just taken from the air? Or does it relate to the fact that if we do register 100 products, it will allow us to go from 35 to 28?
This is the plan.
No, you need to start here. This is the objective. With that objective in mind, how many products do we need to register? Not the other way around. I'm going to register 100 products and I hope something happens. Hope is not a KPI, right? That's important. So it's a top down. So you need, in order to achieve this, you need to register 100 products. And that department, or that head of that division says, yes, HOD.
The number
Right. But my argument with you, right, let's talk about this. 100 products. What products? What products? Random products? No. Products that are going to allow you to achieve your target. So within these products, not all products are equal. So within these products, what are the products that allow you to go down here? So it's not only the number of products, it's the quality of the products and the type of products. So now you're working on things that matter. Not just, oh, I got this nice product, let's register that. Oh, I like this one, let's do that. That's random, man. Right? It's random. How can you build a KPI in random? So basically, these 100 products, this is the discussion that should happen up here. What are these 100 products? Not down here. You shouldn't be saying, oh, I'm in charge of registering products. I'll just go out and register anything I want. You need to know what you're registering and why you're registering it. Because we're trying to bring down NRW. And the NRW is going from 35 to 28. So therefore, we need to get these types of products, these type, et cetera. They're going to allow us to do that. Okay. Maybe they're not 20. Or sorry, maybe they're not 100. Maybe they're 30 products.
When their they say they want to set up 100. So they must perform justification why they have.
Exactly. What is an KPI?
They just put the numbers.
Yes. A number is useless if it is not linked to an objective, right? So we have 100 products. Within those products, there are different categories of products, right? Different values associated with those. That then goes down to the department. Now at the department level, we have these 3 types of products. Now you, at your level, which one of these products are you going to work on? And if you turn around and say, oh, I get 1/3 of them, and my colleague gets 1/3, and the other colleague gets 1/3, I get 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, that's not going to work, man. Because it's like everyone has the same KPI. If everyone has the same KPI, no one's responsible. So the way to look at this is to say, if you have 3 categories, don't do 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Do, you have this category, A, you have this category B, you have this category C, and you have to work together. Your KPI should be, I have A, and I'm going to work and help for B and C. I'm going to support my colleagues. That should be your KPI. Help? No.
More.
Yes, yes. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Yeah? So everything basically, this is a valid KPI. But what's important is that if you only do A because you're responsible for A, but what you do in A impacts B and C, then that should be part of your KPI too. You have to work with your colleagues to ensure that they can get their job done, because if they don't get their job done, you don't get your job done and the department doesn't work. But fundamentally, you should be able to turn around and say, I am in control of A. So therefore, it's my responsibility, it's my KPI. That's how it works. If you turn around and say, you are 1/3 responsible for something that others share, you're not responsible. You only have a little bit. So then you have to go in and you have to convince your colleagues, please work on this, because it's my KPI. No, it isn't. You cannot be responsible for something. You cannot accept a KPI that for which you have no responsibility, out of control. It's out of control. Now, you might need to work together. Okay, that becomes a KPI. Working together. You have to be in control of this. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Right? That you cannot have a KPI for which there's no link. No. These here, when we look at page 3 of 18, these are the individual KPIs. So 2. So this might be a different strategy. Or it might be the same, but it has a different element. Each one of them follows the same pattern. You always have to link up to where does this link? And you might end up having to work on 2 or 3 different strategies in your job. That's perfectly okay. As long as you see the link between what you're doing as a job and how it helps the organization. Otherwise, how do you get motivated? I'm just doing work. Doing work is not motivating. It's making a difference that relates, right? Motivates you. Understanding how you fit in the organization motivates you. Yeah.
Is it possible for you to get a full mark KPI even the main KPI is not?
Yeah. So you've done your bit, but others haven't done their bit. Yeah. And basically, yes, that's possible. But at the same time, if everyone does their bit, if everyone reaches their target, then basically it will come back, right? But you are right.
reduce from 55 to 30 out of control. But let's say the individual target will give awareness. So it can.
But that, to me, give awareness is a really weak KPI. Because you're now depending on something that's very difficult to measure. What awareness are you going to measure? You're going to measure the general public?
Because
You're measuring the business.
We need operator to control. So what we can do is we send warning, monitoring. So we done our job, but still we cannot get
Have to do it. You cannot be responsible for somebody not doing their job. So within your KPI, what is under your control when you are trying to get the water company to act? Right? What are the things that you can control and that you can push? So, for example, if the water company does not come back to you or does not do, they have 1 month to comply. If they don't comply, it goes to legal. And that becomes legal issue. So your role and responsibility is to inform, and then the company to follow up. If they don't do their job, it goes to legal. And you make that as short as possible. That's your KPI.
we can get full marks.
You can get full marks on it, but still, the point is that this is set up so that if everyone gets full marks, the company gets full marks. That's how it works, right? It's not feasible that everyone does their job, hits their target, and the company doesn't hit its target. That doesn't make sense. That means the KPIs are wrong. Wrong measures.
Just like last, now you mentioned that the awareness program is a weak KPI, but actually under the SPAN strategy goal, under the strategic communication, the awareness program is part of the activities that we have conduct. So basically, from our perspective, would be in terms of the measurement, would be just
How do we measure it? Yes.
Yeah, how we measure it is by how many programs or awareness that we have conducted during the year. So that would be the measurement. So
Yes, but then again, you could do 25 awareness campaigns and have zero impact. Does that help the organization? No, right? The answer is no. I'll help you there. So it's not the number of campaigns, it's the impact of the campaigns. Yeah. So how do you then, to flip it over, if impact is important, how do we improve impact? Right? And you look at it and say, okay, is it social media? Is it, what type of campaign works? So you have to get feedback from every campaign to see what impact, you have to measure impact.
Especially we are getting feedback from the campaign, we are getting feedback from the consumers,
Good.
from the operators.
Good.
So can that be considered as part of the KPI for the...
I would say that you would then turn around your KPI to something along the line, I'm not saying this is KPI, but it could be looking something along the lines of, we will run 20 campaigns that basically have an awareness generated impact of 80% on what population, on this population. So say what the population is, what impact you want, and therefore you have a minimum amount of campaigns that allow you to do that. Not a maximum, not a total percentage, but how you will build this. And more importantly, it's not the number of campaigns that's important, it's the change in impact, awareness. So I will move awareness from 75 to 80%. I'll have a budget of X, and we'll ensure that we get that 5% jump by getting impact, each campaign, at least 80%. Now you know your numbers. And your boss knows your numbers, and the people in the organization know your numbers. If you hit those numbers, great. But to hit those numbers, you're also going to have to think. Because in order to get 80%, what if it only achieves 60%? Well, that means that campaign didn't work. Okay, what can we learn from that campaign? How can we use that data to improve this number next time? So it's a learning process. And that KPI is sitting there, is nice because it's basically saying, I don't know the answers right now, but I'm going to work towards them. This is my objective. This is what I want to reach. Yeah, does that make sense? It's like, what? can see her, hey, wait a minute, I have to do this? But do you understand that that is impactful, right? That has, and you know how to do that kind of sort of. You'll figure your way out. But to turn around and say, I'm going to do 25 campaigns. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything, it's a number. Right? If you do 25 fantastic campaigns, bravo! I can guarantee you out of 25 campaigns, not all are going to work. So measure impact. You are not an organization that is used to measuring things. That's another problem, particularly customer feedback. And so impact is customer feedback, right? So you have to figure out how am I going to measure impact. That may or may not have been figured out yet. That's an important part of your job moving forward. Because otherwise, it's like, I had the 20 campaigns, so what? But is it enough? Is it good enough? Is it clean enough? Is the data good? That's what you need to worry about. Because it's your job, it's your self-satisfaction, it's your ability to say, yes, this campaign makes sense because it works this way. The data shows, right? Data is very powerful. Documentation is very powerful. And to be fair, under today's world, with social media moving as it is, it's very, very hard to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. We don't know. We're entering into a phase where we don't know. We know certain campaigns, but is it an Instagram campaign? Is it a campaign aimed at 25-year-olds? Is it a campaign aimed at, corporate people? What is it? What is it? How are we going to measure it? These are the things you need to start thinking about. And your KPIs become much clearer and much more significant. Because now you're thinking about the right things. Not just about, I'm going to do another campaign, I'm going to do another campaign, I'm going to do another campaign. For what? So these are really good conversations today because you're going into the detail. You're thinking, how am I going to do my job better under this system? And that's exactly the way you need to be thinking. And it's not easy, okay? It's not easy, especially the first few times.
So you say the KPI should be in our hand, right?
Yeah.
So if let's say the KPI is to come up with the rules.
With the
rules.
rules, yeah.
But that, in order to come up with the rules, it involves like a legal department.
Yeah.
So for my KPI, for individual KPI, I just put it until I pass over to the,
Yes.
the legal department, right?
Right, that would be it, but at the same time, I would argue that the legal department has to accept it. Because you could be sending rules to them and they make no sense.
Yeah.
I sent 25 rules to them and then the legal department turns around and says, yeah, they were no good.
Because currently it's until the implementation and rollout
Right.
our individual KPI.
Right.
But there will be some portion that it involves other departments.
Yes.
So how do we go about
So
it?
basically it is what's under your control. And more importantly, how do you judge quality? Quality is not volume. Quality is feedback from customers. Your internal customers is legal. That's who your customer is. So you need to go and talk to them. And you need to ask them, okay, I'm going to write my KPI, this is my KPI, right? New rules, new regulations. What do you need in that new rule and regulation in order for you to do your job? These are what you need from them. They will give you the quality of what they need from you. That becomes your KPI. It's important to understand who your customers are and what are they looking for. And the only way that you can get what they're looking for is to ask them. So in developing your KPIs, look, it's not as easy doing external because you don't, it's outside world. Internal customers are cool because you know who they are and you have a relationship with them. Yeah. And the other thing is for your KPI, be careful because where are the rules coming from? Who's telling you to write those rules? Right? Where are they coming from? How much influence do you have over them? So go and figure out, because it's what we talk about. And we did this in the workshop on KPIs with the HODs. You basically said, most of you are in jobs that basically, this is my job, this is me, and this is my KPI. My KPI has customers that I'm feeding. In your case, it's the legal department. So my KPI is I make rules, or change rules, whatever you want to call it, and it goes into customers. One is legal department, another one might be another one, I don't know. Third one, right? So legal. What does legal need from me in order for me to fulfill my KPIs? You need to go talk to them. Not become your KPI. But more importantly, you depend on others from outside, right? Maybe it's the ministry, I don't know. Maybe it's legal itself, legal department. Where do you get your information to make new rules, right? Go talk to them. Because they're the ones that are going to supply you. And if they don't supply you, you can't do your job. So understand, where are the difficulties here that will prevent you from doing your job? And how can you improve that? Just don't look towards your customers, look towards your suppliers too. Be aware, at least, of them. This is going to take time. It's going to take 2-3 cycles before you get it. But you start with your customers. Start and slowly but surely turn around and say, okay, what about my suppliers? How can I improve the information that I get in order to make my rules? How can I improve the supply of that information? That will help you do your KPI. It doesn't become your KPI, but it helps you do your KPI. Does that make sense? It's not the way it's operating right now. It's like, what? That's not what I was told. But I can tell you, the thing is, if you get a KPI that fits the needs of your customers, this whole organization is going to lift up. You're going to feel fulfilled. The whole organization is moving forward. And that's why we say the noise level starts increasing, because you start talking to legal. That conversation hasn't happened yet, but you'll have that conversation that will create noise. Yeah.
Some of the KPIs that we are doing now, it's linked with the government policies.
Yeah.
So how if there is change in government policy,
Yeah.
how will
Yeah. And that's a fair comment, and we'll do that at the mid-level, mid-year. Okay, so let's look at that. So these are the KPIs, right? There are 5 of them, KPI pages. If you're a executive, you have up to 7. You don't necessarily have to have 7. You can have up to 7. Then, now that you've decided what this KPI is and what the target is, and remember, you have comments all up and down here. Write it. If you disagree with something, write it. Or if you have a question, write it. Don't let things sit. Write, document. Okay? So basically, you have your target, you have your KPI. Now, you need to discuss 2 more things with that KPI. Your stretch KPI, what's your stretch target that will allow you to go from a 3 to a 4, and what is the weightage? What's a percentage that this KPI is going to have? Remember, this percentage has to be a minimum of 15. And here again, you have the opportunity of making comments. Or the boss might make a comment. It's not just you writing everything down. Okay, so that's KPIs. Planning KPIs. Each KPI is linked to the organization strategy. And if you can't find a link, don't accept it as a KPI. Because you're not helping the organization move forward, right? You will find it, my friend. You will find it. Solidarity. If it doesn't make sense to you, then how are you going to be able to do it as a job? How are you going to be able to be motivated on Monday morning to come into work? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why this is important, right? If you can understand that link, that's very important. But you do, and in terms of the water supply, there is a strategy, right? There's a regional strategy. There is a regional strategy. Yeah. That's okay. Supporting departments are just as important as operational departments. You know, the awareness campaign is a supporting campaign. It's not a operational thing, right? You're there to support the organization. It's valid. It's valid. Each region has its own challenges, right? That's fair. Perlis is not like Illinois, et cetera, et cetera. But within the context of water supply, water management, and revenue management, there are strategies for each of the regions. If there isn't, you have to develop one. And these have to be in place once you can have a KPI. That's Now, so we're done with the KPI, planning the KPIs. This is in January. So now we go into the behaviors. So here are the behaviors, and these are the things that we're talking about in terms of behaviors, right? So basically, we're now talking about the how of the job, that it has to be observable, right? That it has to be consistently displayed or consistently shown by the employee. That there's 7 of these. 3 are fundamental, and the other 4 are growth-based. That we want to use the KISS principle, the one we've just been introduced to this morning, right? And that you should really have a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 5 behaviors for every core behavior. Minimum 2, why? Because if everything is okay, then say it's okay. Show it. Keep. So the next pages are these. This is the honesty one. Remember the things we saw? Behaviors that are appropriate, behaviors that are inappropriate. Here are the 5 potential boxes that you can fill out. Right? So fill out, take one of these from either side, and basically say, do I keep it, do I improve, do I stop, or do I start? Does that make sense? You've done this exercise already. You've done it alone, but now you have to do it with your boss. So basically now you're talking to your boss about general issues or behaviors towards honesty. So, 1 or 2 of these, two minimum, 5 maximum. And why only 5? Because 5 times 7, you have 35 behaviors to follow. You don't really know. So keep it short, keep it sweet, but do fill out at least 2 per page. Because otherwise, it's like all behaviors are okay. If there are no behaviors, everything is okay. That's not the purpose of this. If you fill out, like for example, knows the follow stand code of ethics, and yeah, you do it really well, so keep it. So that box is ticked. Then you don't need any action to change it, right? Just keep it. But if you have to improve it because you don't quite know what it is, then if you tick this box, put down the action that you agree with your boss of what you're going to do to change it. How are you going to improve it over the year? If you're going to stop it, how are you going to ensure that it's stopped? If you're going to start it, when are you going to start it? How are you going to start it? Right? So you only fill this in if you really are to improve, stop, or start. So this is honesty. The next page is discipline. Same approach, same. Right? We've done this before. Accountable, proactive, customer-driven, strategic, and studious. Those are the 7. Right? And if everything is a key, and there's no improvement possible, be careful. You want to improve on certain things to show. Yeah? So it's okay to have improved, stop, or start. Okay? This is the final page then of the planning review that happens in January, and it has with all forms. This comments of the superior can be clear. The employee has the right to comment, and then you sign on. You can write what you want. If they turn around and say, no, you're not allowed to say that, don't sign. And you will see, initially a lot of things will happen, and then less and less. And then the bosses that don't want you to write something, they become visited. Because basically it's like, what's going on in your department? Why are people signing the document? But you want to arrive at a point where you're both agreeing and you're signing. That's healthy. That means the organization is working. You don't want to have such a disagreement that you refuse to sign it and you lost it. Then you have a real problem on our hands. So this should be a polite conversation. Every so often goes into a fight, so I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it should. Okay? So that's the planning one. The midterm one now, this is where you came up with what if things happen. Yeah, this is where we capture it. This is the one that happens, this is the form for July period. And basically, again, who's the employee, what is the supervisor doing, right? And then it comes down here. KPIs should only be revised if there's a change in priorities or the targets are beyond control of the employee and the division. Things change. But don't change KPIs every month. That's hopeless. Change them only then really in the middle of the year. And only when it's absolutely essential, and it's not you who's changing it, it's the environment that's changing it. Different priorities, new government. These are all things that are acceptable because they come from the outside, they impact our KPI. Fine. Let's understand. But if you do change your KPI, this is the other point. If you do change your KPI now in July, you have to go to your customers and inform them. You have to go to the legal department and say, hey, by the way, my KPI has changed from this to this, and it might impact you. Because they have to be informed so that they can change their KPI. It's only fair, right? There's another conversation that happens. That's just being part of the spam community. You take care of each other. It's like, oh, it's not my fault. I've had to change my KPIs. Sorry. No, it's like, my KPIs have changed. How does that impact you? How can I help you? That's important. And you'll see that change, that dynamic change within the organization. So the first thing that you do is you fill out the KPIs as they were given in January. What was the target, the stretch target? What have we achieved today? How are we doing on the stuff that's been agreed upon? And then any comments there. And maybe it's at this point in time say, well, this one doesn't apply anymore. Okay, if it doesn't apply anymore, then you have an additional sheet. That's page 3, this one, which is basically, here was the original KPI, this was the original target. By the way, things have changed, so we have to revise the KPI and or we have to revise the target. This is where you do that in the mid-year. And that then becomes your new target. So at the end of the year, you'll be, you'll be rated based on the KPI you agreed and finalized in July. Okay? So July is like a checkpoint. It's a health check. How are we doing so far? Are we falling behind? Are we ahead of schedule? Great. Is there anything that's changed? If it's changed, we have to change our KPI. That's important. That's all that is. So basically here, because you're already having this meeting, let's talk about behaviors. Halfway through the year, how are we doing? What's happening? So here are the 17 behaviors: honesty, discipline, accountable, proactive, customer-driven, strategic. Is there anything that's changed? The things that we keep? We stop? We start? This is fairly rapid, but it's at least a check. And here again, final page, sign off by superior with comments, sign off by employee with comments. Opportunity to say something. You don't have to fill in that box, but it's good. What this does is it documents. We're building documentation. So when something happens, you can go back and say, oh, by the way, always take photocopies of your, right? So you have it on file. Don't trust the system. Verify is good. The next one is at the end of the year. Now it's a final performance. Now we're going to get a rating. And this is then in December. Yeah? December of the year, this is the form. The first one is, again, page 1. The name, all that, superiors and supervisors, and then explanation, instructions. Right? And in this instruction, we have, please expect that if you do your job, it's a 3, not a 4. And the 4 is only for KPIs assigned to employees who have reached minimum of their stretch target. And that the rating of 4 competencies can only be assigned to exceptional behaviors. So we're already informing the boss and the employee that this is what's expected. Here are your KPIs. So what were they? Remember these are the ones from July that may have been revised. Target, stretch target, achievement. So compared to the target or the stretch target, what did you achieve? And then variation. Are we above? Are we below? Are we at? An opportunity to comment. From that, then you go to the next page. Here you have to rewrite the KPIs. The variation, which is this variation, is put in here. You now mention what is the weightage of that KPI, and ultimately, based on the variation, is it a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4? If it's a 3, you take that 3 times the weightage, and that is your score here. Just like we did, or showed you before. So, 30% times 3 is 0.9, that's 0.9 there, et cetera, et cetera. Do it out that way. And at the bottom, you just add up the scores, and that's your weighted average. KPI is done. What does it look like for behavior? Basically, we rewrite in here the behaviors that we had mentioned already and that we'd updated mid-year. What had happened with that, and then based on this, is it a 1, or 2, or a 3? 3 is consistent, 2 is still needs improvement, and 1 is we're not seeing this. This is the discussion you need to have with your boss in terms of is it 2, 3, 1? And it comes pretty clear. If everything is stopped, stop doing this and it didn't happen, then it's probably a 1. If a lot of stuff is keep and you're doing a great job and everything is happy, it's a 3. If you're still improving and you're not quite there yet and you still have issues, it's a 2. It's okay to have 2. And remember, this is a behavior that's based on foundation. So it only goes up to 3. You cannot have a 4. Same thing with discipline. You cannot have a 4 with discipline, and you cannot have a 4 with accountability. Now, how about the other 4? Proactive, exactly the same thing. You're writing in what were the behaviors. You're writing in what was supposed to happen. You're writing comments, and then it's a 1 to 4. And you go through the list like this. Customer driven, 1 to 4. Strategic, 1 to 4. And last, at least studious, 1 to 4. When that is done, you then take per page, right? So for example, in studious it was a 3. You put the 3 here. So 3 times 3.1, 1.1 is 3.3, put 3.3 here. 3, 3.3. And you add all of these up, and you divide by 7, and that's your score. That's your rating. You then take your total KPI score, and your total rating that comes from down here. Put it up here. You multiply by 0.3. You multiply this KPI score by 0.7, and you get the total score. And this is where it gets interesting. Now at the end of the year, you've gone through all this, you have your ratings, right? The boss gets to write something. The employee gets to write something, and you sign off. The thing is that the HOD has to see this page, and they have to sign off. So whatever you write down here, whatever your boss writes, the HOD will see. That doesn't mean the HOD will act, but they should act. And if they don't act, they will become invisible in the organization. That's also something. So there's a reinforcement factor in this system. Not a guarantee, it's an element that's in place that will allow the system to start regulating and held accountable. Okay? Be reasonable. If you've registered 500 products and your stretch target is 100, then A, the KPI is wrong. But B, means that you have a process that can hit 500. Okay. Now that becomes the minimum for next year, for sure. For sure. And because you registered 500 this year, you're not going to register 300 next year, right? You're going to register at least 500. What more can you do? Yeah, I would say, yeah. If I were your boss, I would argue that yes, that becomes. Yeah. That's the minimum for next year. Exactly. But you remember what we're about. We're about improving. We're about being proactive. We're about being customer driven. So as a consequence, we're constantly improving ourselves. But don't hold back. You just do 100 because you're supposed to do 100. Because that also shows, hey, something's going on here, right? That's not cool. That's the way the organization moves forward. Is that everyone is working to improve. And if you can register 500 products, it means you have a good system in place, a good process in place. Use it. Get better.
Score should be in round numbers only, like 1
Yeah, it will end up, no, right, so it's 3.1, 3.2, not 3.125. That doesn't mean anything, right? That doesn't mean anything. So your high 3, a mid 3, a low 3, that's 0.1. 3.1.
When you give the score should be 1, 2, 3, or 4, right?
Yeah.
Not 3.5.
Yeah, it will happen that way, because what happens here, for example, here, when you add these up and divide by 7, you're going to end up with a
The
ratio.
score, yes, but
Yeah. The KPIs?
the KPIs.
No, the KPIs, because there's a weight, right? 30%. So if you're 3 times 30%, it's 0.9. So you will end up, you'll end up with a point or
When
something.
we multiply by
Yeah.
weightage, yes,
Yes.
but when we put the score there, it
Right.
should be.
Oh, yes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, yes.
Correct.
Yes, the initial.
Because
Yeah.
currently we do 4.5, 3.5.
Right, no, that takes care of itself, right? You have to circle one of these. There's no 3.5 here. And same with KPIs. Oh, we don't have KPIs. KPIs, yes, we do. KPIs here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So the original number has to be 1, 2, 3, 4. The end number will not be. Okay, I showed you that earlier, right? That basically, if you get under 80% achievement, then it's probably a 1. If it's 80 to 100%, it's a 2. If it's 100 to 110%, it's a 3. And above 110%, it's a 4. It's a scale. So, right? And to achieve 110%, actually, the 4 is the stretch target. Stretch target. So it's consistent. Now, we've had this question every time, and so I'm going to preempt the question. What if you have a boss that basically doesn't like conflict, he's a nice person, and they give everyone a 4? Right? But you also have bosses that basically are much more realistic and practical and say it's a 3. So it's unfair, right? It's unfair. There are 2 ways of doing this. First way is to say, okay, you have a department of X, and so therefore 20% of that department gets 4, 60% or 7% gets 3. The problem is span is too small for that. And if you go below a certain number, it's basically around 30 people in the department, then it's not fair. Because assigning arbitrarily someone as a 4 versus a 3, it's not statistically relevant. Right? So therefore, we advocate that basically and this is a proposal, it's not fit yet, but this is what we would propose. That basically we allow the bosses to determine. 2 things happen. If the boss is super lenient and everyone's a 4, it becomes visible in the organization. There's something wrong with that, right? If everyone gets a 2, there might be something wrong with that too. So it becomes a little bit of there should be a nice mix, and it should be explicable. Why is it a 4 versus a 3? We have the documentation for that. Yeah, so it should be obvious. If it isn't, there's another process that you can do, which is called forced ranking. Basically, you take the people within that category. Usually, it's only the P's. Don't worry about the S's, but the P, maybe P2 onwards. And therefore, there's a certain amount of people in that department, in that category. You basically, as an organization, the HODs sit there and they spend the time figuring out who ranks where. Forced ranking, it's called. It's a very unpleasant exercise for the HODs. It's a very difficult exercise to do because they have to basically compare people. But we can see, and we've done this many times before, that really the 4s come out. They do come out. And the 3s do come out, and the 2s do come out. But that also means that your final score can be changed, right? Can be changed. Because your boss is a really nice person, they gave everyone a 4, but in reality, when you compare it outside that meeting of the performance management meeting to you and the boss in the department, when you compare it on the scale of span, it's really not a 4. Or it's really not a 2, it's better than that. But it's really not a 4, it's the first. And the way that's done is an internal meeting of the HODs, and you have to look at it at the category or at the job level. That's the way it's done. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be done. That's up to the steering committee to do. That's one way to do it. Any other
on our public side. So to get it as our
Here again, the effort that goes into putting together that plan, because that's the key, right? At the beginning of the year, what is your KPI? That plan of how does that KPI come to existence is linked to a strategy is vital. It's vital. If you don't see the link is made up, right? It's A, B, C, D, and then you go, what's this? What's my KPI? It has not linked. And then you have a right to turn around and question it. It's a worthwhile discussion to have.
Because there was actually one of the definition comply with the NTP. Is that it?
Comply with the
SOP.
what SOP? What does comply mean? How many times? What percentage is acceptable or not acceptable? These
Definition comply with the